Welcome to another episode of the Sleeper Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Lehman. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, please make sure to leave a 5-star rating or review on whatever platform you're listening from, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. It really helps a lot, and it's a great way to support the show. Also, if you haven't already, please follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Sleeper Dynasty. Make sure to check out sleeperdynasty.com for t-shirts with hand-drawn designs for your favorite players. Right now, we got CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, and CeeDee Lamb on the site. Shop and use promo code football for 10% off your order. All right, it's good to be back. We don't have a lot going on in the news right now, but we have less than 4 weeks until the start of preseason. And I know everybody's like, who cares about preseason, right? I care about preseason. All right. The Texans versus Bears on August 1st. Be there. But yeah, I'm excited, guys. I'm excited. Less than 4 weeks. I feel like we have been in a dead zone for a while where there's literally no news at all. The biggest news we have is Ramondre Stevenson signing a massive deal with the Patriots. But other than that, it's kind of slow right now. Also, I just went on Twitter and saw Malik Neighbors apparently was hitting up the strip club. So, I mean, good for him. Apparently he's throwing around like thousands of dollars. So spreading the wealth, man. Spreading the wealth. I mean, it's by Malik Neighbors. Let's see what else we got going on. We got Dak Prescott was spotted in a walking boot and is dealing with a very minor foot sprain. I mean, I wouldn't really worry about that one too much. I think Dak will be back, but it is kind of a weird time with Dak. Like he hasn't gotten a deal. He hasn't gotten an extension yet. And I don't really think Jerry Jones is going to extend him for some reason. So the Cowboys, this may well be Dak's last year. I'm not sure what the contract situation is, but it kind of feels like he's not loved as much as he should be. Like he's kind of an elite quarterback when he wants to be, but then he can never seem to get them over the hump. Kind of like a Kirk Cousins, but not Kirk Cousins. I don't want to call him a Kirk Cousins because he's not that average. Like he's at least like above average, you know. Brandon Ayuk for sure wants to stay with the 49ers. I feel like we're getting like mixed signals coming out of the 49ers and Brandon Ayuk news, because the last thing I saw was that he said that he was unhappy with them and that he was like not going to be there anymore. So who knows, dude? All right. So today we're talking Brian Thomas Jr. and Xavier Worthy. I think for a long time, a lot of people, pre-draft, we had Brian Thomas Jr., who was very obviously the number 4 wide receiver for rookies. And then post-draft, we have the Chiefs going after Xavier Worthy, and Xavier Worthy's value just shot up just because he's partnered with Patrick Mahomes for who knows how long. He's going to get that bump. All right, so let's get into their profiles. Brian Thomas Jr., he's 6'3", 209 pounds. He's got above average hands and arm length. His span is in the 82nd percentile. He ran a 4.33 40 at the combine, which is in the 95th percentile. Insane. I think that Xavier Worthy running his 40 kind of screwed over guys like Brian Thomas Jr. because, yeah, Xavier Worthy is fast, right? Like the fastest, the fastest guy in the NFL. But running a 4.33 40 at 6'3", 209 pounds, that's elite, guys. This man's a burner. His 10-yard was 1.5, which is in the 89th percentile. He had a vertical of 38.5, which is in the 84th percentile, and a broad jump that was in the 81st percentile. So let's get into his stats. He was with LSU for 3 years. So his freshman year, 28 receptions, 359 yards, and 2 touchdowns. In his sophomore season, he had 31 receptions for 361 yards and 5 touchdowns. And his junior season popped off. This was his last year. 68 receptions, 1,177 yards, and 17 touchdowns. Whew. Man, I mean, he definitely broke out a little bit later. But I think just the fact of like, the thing that impresses me the most is he's doing that with Malik Neighbors on the field. So shout out to Jaden Daniels for being able to give both of those guys that much production. But we're talking, he had an insane junior season and he came out early into the NFL. I mean, what more can you ask for, really? What more can you ask for? 1,177 yards and 17 touchdowns. So, yeah, man, his stats kind of show that he is in an upper echelon of wide receivers. I do think that it's a little bit troubling that he only had like 350 receiving yards in his freshman and sophomore season. But when you see a junior season like that, and you're coming off of that, coming into the NFL, it's just kind of elite, man. When I look at the tape with Brian Thomas Jr., he's just electric. Like he can run a full route tree for a guy coming out of college, right? Like he's not Marvin Harrison Jr. He's not Malik Neighbors. He's got enough. And he's not just a burner. I think I've heard a lot of people say that he is what we want a Christian Watson to be. That stop-start speed, that torque. He's got crazy ability there. And really, it's just the length. He can really use that size and that speed to his advantage on tape. I may have mentioned this before, but one thing I do whenever I watch a player's tape is I look at their height and weight. And when I'm watching the film and I'm watching a guy that's like huge, right? Say you're watching a guy that's like 6'5", 250. You know you're expecting a pace that's going to be a little bit slower, right? You're expecting kind of, maybe they look fast compared to other players, but they're still a little sluggish, even if they're fast, right? So you kind of compare it to a guy like that's 5'10", 180 pounds. Those guys on tape better look fast as hell. Because if they don't look fast and they're that small, then there's an issue there. They don't have good game speed. So whenever you're watching film, you just got to keep the size in mind so that you can have a realistic, like, oh man, that guy looked fast and he was 6'3", 209 pounds. That's exactly what Brian Thomas Jr. looked like. He looked fast. That's just the main thing with Brian Thomas. He runs a full route tree. He's got the speed. He's got the ability. He's got the hands. What else? I mean, he's an LSU receiver. I mean, I think the fact that Malik Neighbors is such an all-around prospect, it's making us overlook Brian Thomas Jr. a little bit. Let's get into some of the deeper metrics with Brian Thomas Jr. His first 2 seasons, he had a 1.0 yard per team pass attempt rate. Not great. But in his breakout season, he had a 2.86 yards per team pass attempt while playing with Malik Neighbors. That's insane. The fact that he had that while playing with Malik Neighbors, who Malik Neighbors was breaking his own metrics over there. Another thing about Brian Thomas is that he's young. You have a lot of older wide receivers. Xavier Legette, 23. Ricky Pearsall, 23. Brian Thomas Jr. is 21 years old, guys. 21. And because of that, him having the breakout season that he had last year, that speaks volumes, right? Because if you can do that while you're 20 years old, that's going to give you statistically a better chance at being successful in the NFL. Xavier Worthy, wide receiver out of Texas, 21 years old, 5'11", 165 pounds. Guys, if you want to if you want to know what percentile that's in, it's in the 1 percentile, the lowest you can get. He is the smallest that you can be. He's got tiny ass hands in the 21st percentile, 33rd percentile in his arm length, and then in his 40, he ran a 4.21 40 at the combine, 100th percentile. So he's got the smallest everything. Of course, he's gonna run a great 40. And I was high on Xavier Worthy pre-draft. And this was why. We knew he was fast because he came out at the beginning of his college career like a cannon. Like he went off. 41-inch vertical, that's in the 96th percentile. And then his broad jump was 131, which is in the 96th percentile. That's great. Like he's an athlete. I'm not saying he's not an athlete. But what I'm saying is he's 165 pounds. He's tiny. And we've seen it work, right? Tank Dell did it last year. Like Tank Dell was small. We've seen Devontae Smith be successful. He's small. But it's just concerning to me, the size. Like if he gets pressed on the line, how is he going to deal with that? And I think that's the biggest concern is, can he use his speed to get off the line? He needs to work on his release, because if he can get a good release, then he's fine. But it's just a matter of like, if he has a big guy on him pressing him, he's going to have some trouble. He was a 4-star recruit by ESPN, and he was handed a 4-star grade by 24/7 Sports. Let's get into his stats. His freshman season, 62 receptions, 981 yards, and 12 touchdowns. His sophomore season, 60 receptions, 760 yards, and 9 touchdowns. So a little bit slower, but after you have a freshman season like that, it's going to be hard to keep up with those numbers. And then his junior season, his last season, 75 receptions, 1,014 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So really it was, he got the production with the yards his junior season. His production is great. And that's what had me high on Xavier Worthy pre-draft, was just the fact that, like, yes, he's small. His age-adjusted production in college was elite, Xavier Worthy. And that's why after his freshman year in college, he was being drafted as a first-round pick in Devy leagues. 2 things you need to remember about Xavier Worthy when you're in drafts: age-adjusted production, speed. All right? That's what you need to know. And on tape, it shows, right? Like, he can run routes. He can get open. I think he could have had a better career if he had had better quarterback play. But yeah, I mean, that's Xavier Worthy in a nutshell. Now, where I have them, I have Brian Thomas Jr. above Xavier Worthy. And I think the community does now, only because there was some footage that came out from camp where Xavier Worthy was dropping balls and like he's getting knocked down a little bit. So I do think the community is right about Brian Thomas Jr. and Xavier Worthy. To me, it's just like Brian Thomas Jr. in rookie drafts, when you can get him at the end of the first round, like, this is a guy that I like just as much as Rome Odunze pre-draft. I'm not sorry for that. Like, I'm not. Let's talk about the offenses that they're both going into. Xavier Worthy is going to the Chiefs. He's playing with Patrick Mahomes. That's a great situation. You have Rashee Rice. Who knows how long he's going to miss this year? We still don't know. Travis Kelce is there. Marquise Brown is there. It's a little crowded. And there's not really a lot of vacated targets to go around. So he's really going to have to, what I'm hoping with Xavier Worthy is that he goes into this situation with the Chiefs and Andy Reid uses him as a weapon, right? He's feeding him screens. He's getting him out in space. He's being creative with them. He's doing reverses with him. Like, he's that speedy player, that weapon on offense that you can use to just do all these things, right? And then hopefully he can get up to speed quickly. And then over the next couple of years, he could be the guy with Patrick Mahomes. He could be. That's the upside. That's the upside with Xavier Worthy. Now, me personally, I don't think this year he's going to do anything crazy because it's such a crowded room. I don't see Travis Kelce just disappearing. Like, Travis Kelce is probably going to lead that receiving room in targets again, just because that relationship with Patrick Mahomes, like, that's not going anywhere. And if it is, then that's a really bad thing for Travis Kelce. He's probably on his way out, but I don't see Xavier Worthy really having that crazy of a freshman year. On the opposite end, Brian Thomas Jr., he's coming into a situation with the Jags, top 5 vacated targets in the NFL. Top 5 vacated targets in the NFL. That is a fantastic situation. Calvin Ridley left. Zay Jones left. It's wide open. And I think he could have an incredible season, incredible rookie season. So that's why, if you're looking between these two in your rookie draft, you're taking Brian Thomas Jr. Also, if you're at the end of a redraft league, I would take Brian Thomas Jr. because he's one of those guys where you could throw a dart at the end of your redraft leagues and it could be week 1. It could be like a Puka situation. It could be week 1, he is Trevor Lawrence's number 1 guy. And if that is the case, then he's going to be Trevor Lawrence's guy for a while. Like, it's probably going to be Christian Kirk to start the season. But the way I see it is that towards the end of the year, Brian Thomas Jr. is leading that room in receptions, yards, whatever. Touchdowns. He can obviously get touchdowns. He scored 17 last year in college. Yeah, man. So Brian Thomas Jr., probably my most rostered player in leagues right now, just because I like taking him, at the 108. It's usually between him and Jonathan Brooks for me. I've taken Jonathan Brooks in some, but sometimes Jonathan Brooks goes a little bit sooner. So Jonathan Brooks isn't even available, but sometimes I like Brian Thomas more than Jonathan Brooks, because there's that chance where Jonathan Brooks is still recovering. We'll find out soon. But say Jonathan Brooks doesn't recover in the time that we think he's saying he's not going to be ready for the season, then yeah, man, Brian Thomas Jr. is a better Dynasty Fantasy Football asset for your roster. Running backs already are going to lose their value, especially this year. The running backs suck. I mean, we all know that, but literally, like, there's Jonathan Brooks, there's Trey Benson, and then it's slim pickings. It really is. It's you're throwing darts. And even if you like someone, it's throwing a dart. So yeah, man, I think I like Brian Thomas from, the middle of the first, not the middle, but, the 108, the 109, end of the first. I've seen him go into the early second, so the value is just good. But I am always taking Brian Thomas before Xavier Worthy. I think there was one league that I took Xavier Worthy instead of Brian Thomas Jr., and I immediately felt a certain type of way about it. And that's when I knew I was like, that I have to have Brian Thomas over Xavier Worthy. So if you're taking one of these guys, it's Brian Thomas Jr. End of story. All right, guys, it's going to wrap it up for today's pod. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please make sure to leave a 5-star rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on future episodes. Follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Sleeper Dynasty. Also, please check out the Sleeper Gang merch and the custom hand-drawn designs on sleeperdynasty.com. Peace.